Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on using technology to handle CSAT or customer satisfaction. I'll be your presenter today. My name's Yvette Adams and I'm from the Training Collective. I just want to say a quick hello on camera so you can see what I look like through the voices, and now I'm going to switch on over to slides. If you would like to drop any text messages during the presentation, which we expect will last between 45 minutes and 1 hour, feel free in the text chat area. However, I'll largely be responding to these at the end of the webinar. One moment and we'll go live. Okay, now you should be able to see my full screen. As I said, we're proud to be delivering this webinar on behalf of SOCAP, Society of Consumer Affairs Professionals. And their mission, as you're probably aware, is to inspire and assist complaint management and customer care professionals to provide service excellence, ethical and fair outcomes for consumers. A little about me. I have presented for SOCAP a couple of times, but in case this is your first session, I was born and raised in New Zealand. You can probably hear the accent. I started my career in communications at the New Zealand government's, it was called the Hillary Commission, which is the equivalent of the Australian Sports Commission. So if any of you are logging on and have a government background, that's certainly where I started out. But I've essentially worked in PR, marketing and media my whole career. These days more in the digital marketing side of things. But I do absolutely dabble in PR and do a lot of training in that space as well. I travelled for most of my 20s. I left Wellington, New Zealand when I was 21 and spent the next 7 years based in the UK, earning money, and then travelling the world. And I wound up here on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland in 2004. Can't believe it was actually 15 years ago. I've got 2 children that I juggle business and life around. They're aged 12 and 15, proud mama. And I've started 6 businesses and sold 2. Right now I'm running 3. The Creative Collective, which is a digital marketing agency. The Training Collective, which is officially bringing you the training today in partnership with SOCAP, and awardshub.com, which is an online portal for finding business awards and entering them into them. I get to do some pretty cool stuff. I've been asked to speak by Google and train with Facebook. Really recently, I was down with Facebook February this year, doing 3 days training and learning lots about their amazing technologies and what's on the horizon. I have my own online show about young entrepreneurs that you can watch on a platform called Bizversity. It's like a university for business, a bit like the Netflix for business, and you can find that on a phone. And I've also won multiple business awards, so that's just a little bit of background. What we're going to cover today is obviously why it's important to measure if your customers are satisfied. I'm going to go and guess that a lot of you maybe already are measuring if your customers are satisfied, but it's really important that we continue to do that, and I'm hoping I can give you some more perspectives. Maybe some different parts of the journey a customer has with your company that you could be measuring, not just at the end, which is the standard area. Maybe some different methods of capturing that customer satisfaction level, or maybe some different technologies to experiment with as well. I am a big believer that digital was better than the paper copies when it comes to the stuff, so we'll chat about that. I will introduce you to lots of systems, but there are a lot out there, and there's absolutely no way I can say which one's for you. So I'll tell you some pros and cons, but you will need to do your own research to evaluate what is suitable, because every business has its own objectives, budgets, and so on. And sometimes systems appear suitable, but once you get into them, they're not. And also sometimes there's a need to integrate them with other systems that you're using. So it really depends what you're trying to do there. I'll talk about what systems suit what industries, but again, it'd be impossible to cover every single industry. So I'll just give a few examples here and there. Customer bases and situations. We'll compare some features and we'll help you compare features and work out which way to go. I'll talk about which ones integrate, what questions to ask, how long is too long, and how to access and interpret. In short, quite a lot. So in case you're not sure of the CSAT, just to be super clear, because I have run sessions before where I presume people do know the answers to this and then they leave going, what was CSAT again? And I go, gosh, I wasn't really explicit on that. So CSAT is short for customer satisfaction. So customer and satis, I guess, is where the CSAT comes in. And it's a commonly used performance indicator used to track how satisfied customers are with your organization's products or services. I think it's pretty important, because it's one thing to be providing a service and be marketing really well and getting them in the funnel, but if they're not actually happy with the service, that is part of the marketing experience, and things need to be done to improve that. So obviously, if business is a bit down, we need to understand why and what parts we need to improve. And these days, I do feel marketing is very much driven by the customer, and we have to be more careful than ever with how satisfied they are. Now, we're running a future session with SOCAP on customer experience and the life cycle, but I wanted you to reflect on at what points your customers could be tested for their satisfaction. So I realize on screen is quite small, and I realize that this customer journey that's just mapped out on here is only an example, and it's roughly what our customer life cycle looks like for our clients. So in the yellow area, they're a lead. They're going to inquire through one of those channels over here for events or word of mouth or media, and now we've got a potential client. Then they give us their details, we start liaising with them, and the oranges, we've converted them. We've either held a paid consult or they've accepted to do some work with us. Then finally for us, it's green, it's a project, and they move through different stages of that project. And ideally, they have such a good experience with us that they want to do more. So I guess in a really traditional sense, we could only measure that client at the very end of that life cycle. But if they're unhappy in the middle and we don't know about it, wouldn't it be better to work that out at the start? And you can do it not necessarily through a really long form, because if we just started with them, they probably don't necessarily want to fill in a bunch of stuff, and they'll be thinking, this is weird, usually I do this at the end. But we can ask them about different interactions. How easy was it to find our inquire with our company, or how did you find the people you've dealt with so far, or are you happy with how the project's tracking, and things like that. So it could even be one question to test their customer satisfaction. Moving on. I do believe, I've had this argument or friendly debate with many team members and actually external customers as well. Some customers we work with are really firm that I just prefer the paper copy. I like to do a workshop and I like to give them the piece of paper, and I like to walk out of there knowing I've got all these pieces of paper. And I say, I get it. And people may be more inclined to tick and flick and fill that in, but it's not very environmentally friendly to start with. You know, we've got this big movement in Australia now to get rid of the plastic straws. If all of us are printing surveys unnecessarily, we're actually not contributing in a positive way to the environment in any way. There's the cost factor. Most businesses are always trying to save on expenses. If you go the paper version, you've got paper printing, ink, not to mention your time, collation and distribution, and probably the biggest one, the data entry once you've got them in. And there's room for human error in that, isn't there? You can easily type some wrong response and it's not actually accurate anymore. I believe you can gain more responses and quickly. You could be issuing these on a text message or on their phone, so they could be in their hands effectively at the event if that's what you were testing anyway. Paper surveys, you can't handle things like drop-down boxes and interactive sliders. You can do tick and flick, sure, but interactive maps or images, what does this image mean to you if you're sort of seeking that qualitative feedback and so on. So there's a lot of benefits in using, in short, a digital survey. Probably my main reason, though, would be the fact that you can analyze the results quicker and get an assessment of what's going on. So yes, you could do a Google form, for instance, and gather feedback, but then you're not going to have the pretty images unless you're really good at manipulating Google Sheets and producing charts out of that. Personally, I think it's one thing to have the data, but two, the real power in all of this customer satisfaction process is analyzing it, understanding it, and doing something with that data. If consistently you're getting complaints about the receptionist or the price being too high, or it being too difficult to work out how to fill in your online form or whatever it may be, that has to be looked at and improved. Okay, different systems you can use. There really is a lot. And I think when it comes to CSAT, a lot of people just straight away think, oh, the post-service survey. But as you can see on screen, there's actually a lot of different ways you can do surveys and measure customer satisfaction. So I'd love you to get thinking right now about how many of these different things you're using And I'm not saying you have to use all of them, but I am saying, have you tried it? Could you try it? Would it suit your audience? So give that some thought. I would love to know at this point in time whether you are already using customer satisfaction systems. It'll be good to reflect on that when we come to questions so I can see where you're at. And if you are using some right now, what do you use and why do you use it? Do you like it or not like it? What is it good for? What is it not so good for? What would you love to find? And hopefully I can give you some solutions today. So feel free to text chat those in and we'll have a look at that in a moment. Now, I've just got a text saying that some of you are struggling to see the slides. Okay. Some people are saying they can only see the audio. Here are the slides, so you can see them. So I did test this earlier, and I have got someone online showing me that they can see these. I do want to resolve this for you, though. So I'll just stop sharing my screen and I'll reshare it and see if we can get these slides coming up for you. Connection failure on that link. Well, let me try another. Appreciate your feedback here, guys. Okay, so now I believe Sylvia is saying it does sound, apologies, it does sound good though. Connection failure on that link. Sylvia, are you saying you cannot click on that link? I just want to double check this because it is coming up for me, so I'm trying to resolve the issue. You can click on the link. Okay, fantastic. That sounds like we can click on the link. That's a good fail-safe. Now, as I said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, reshare it, and then hopefully we can get back to this working just fine. Okay, I am screen sharing. And if I flick over, okay, everyone's looking at the slides. Cool. I'm now on slide 9. I can see many of you are too. Now that you can see what I'm talking about, love some interaction. Can you text in? Do you currently use any customer satisfaction systems? And if so, which system do you use and why? And even if you're watching this on a recording, would love you to text in as well because it gets you thinking and interacting. So moving on, some customer satisfaction systems. Now, you can gauge people at the end of the process, like I said, but reflecting back on that customer life cycle, I'd love you to think about, I'm on the screen that says live chat, and it's got lots of different icons on screen. What if you could gauge their satisfaction or interest at the very start? So I'm a big fan of live chat on websites for that reason. So if they are not able to find the price point on your website, they're not able to find the answer to their question, they're not able to find your contact details, how great to be able to respond to them if they inquire with you on live chat. Or also on some of these live chat systems, you can see what page they're on and you can actually provide customer service before they've even asked. So you could say, I see you're on our website page for social media. Are you in the market for some social media services? What channels are you looking to do social media with? Can I help you with anything? And you can start to get their feedback. They might then turn around and say, I'm actually not a live customer and looking at expanding this or whatever. So we're doing this kind of gauging and engaging with them right from the get-go. I'm also, now I'm on the slide, social media monitoring. A big fan of monitoring social media to keep track of who is talking about our services and what the sentiment is, whether that be positive, negative, or neutral. Social media has a big impact on your business, and whilst you might have satisfied customers, if there's other customers on there talking ill of your company, it might actually sway the existing other customers' sentiment. So we want to keep a careful eye on this and gauge it again before it's getting bad. If we're seeing sentiment tracking towards negative, we might actually need to do some kind of more elaborate customer satisfaction process to work out what's going on at a deeper level. But this can help us highlight the issue in the first place. In terms of what systems are out there, well, there's many. Again, there's free and cheap, right through to very enterprise and at the more expensive end of the spectrum. Which system will be suitable to you will really depend on what it is you're looking to mention, but to track, I should say. But it's probably useful just being on this webinar to get the language and know what's out there, so you know what to go and search for on Google to start evaluating these systems. On screen here, I've got an example of mention.com, and actually it's free. And usually when I run workshops on this topic, I'll get people creating a free account just to see what it can do. It's pretty easy to log in there some terms that you'd like to track the sentiment for on social media. So you might start tracking your company brand or a product brand or a staff member, the CEO or someone. Similarly, Hootsuite lets you track this. Mention I quite like because it will track the sentiment, the neutral, positive or negative. And an example I love sharing is years ago, I had some liaisons with the PR team at Queensland Rail. And they weren't using this tool, but something similar. And when they started tracking the sentiment on social media, they realised that overall the sentiment of Queensland Rail, or QR, was pretty negative, to be honest. So their goal was to do a bunch of social media engagement to turn that sentiment around from negative to at least neutral, if not positive. And through a range of strategies, which I won't go into now, they did manage to do that. But key is that they were able to track that sentiment and the level of satisfaction of customers through a monitoring and social media monitoring tool like this. So you can also, with some of these tools, assign tasks to your team. So let's say someone's expressing dissatisfaction with a certain area of your business, and someone in your team absolutely knows what's going on with that and how to resolve it, assign it over to them. So for instance, we have a tech support or support ticket team. And if it was the nature of my website's down, my domain name, I don't know how to renew it, or I don't want to renew it, I could assign it to them for them to handle. So that person gets a nice, swift answer. And you can also, of course, run custom reports and analytics to show the bosses that the investment in this has been worthwhile. Moving on to the title, in-app surveys. I don't know if any of you have got apps or even websites where you'd like to actually run surveys when people are browsing over them. There's a solution out there that I'm quite a fan of called Intercom, so go search that up, and it does allow in-app surveys, and it actually allows them whenever they first open your app, whether that's on a phone or on, depending on how you've got it configured, a web app or on your iPad, or when they are on your website. So the moment they're on the website, the survey can pop up and say whatever it is you want to survey them on. So pretty easy to mobilize. They have all sorts of other functions in that particular software, but it's a good one to look at. Typically, these are quite short types of surveys, 1 or 2, just to gauge a bit of feedback. They will typically have extremely high results. I think half the time, if they're anything like me, you sort of tick an answer just to say, now get off the screen and let me do what I was going to do on this website or app. So they're not going to necessarily offer great insights, but they are going to be good to understand how people are feeling about your site or service as they're actually using it. So if you've launched a new app, let's say, it's pretty important to gauge whether people are happy with it or not and what you can do to improve it. So this next slide, post-service event surveys. This type of survey is delivered immediately after your customers attend an event or have an experience with your company. So this is a typical kind of survey that probably came to mind when I first said customer satisfaction and ways of measuring it. Of course, the sooner after your event or experience, the better, because they're more propelled to say, I'm in the moment, I'll respond, I'll tell you what I thought. And for that to be a truer reflection, sometimes when people go away, even if their sentiment was really high, they had a really good experience and their satisfaction was high and they'd rate you quite well, the longer it goes, the lower it typically will be. They might go from an absolute rave customer to a ho-hum customer. And also they get busy. if they're in the moment, they feel like I just had that service or experience, so I feel compelled to give back. Whereas if it's next week and that's so out of sight, out of mind, you've probably done it yourself, you're less likely to do it. So how do we get these things done? Well, I'm a big fan of, if it's an event, throwing it up on screen and saying you can't leave. It depends how you want to pin them down. You can't obviously chain them to the desk, but saying we'd really like it if you could do this before you leave. And I've just texted it to you now. It's in your hands, or it's in your email right now. Or certainly, if that's not feeling like the right thing to do, it does depend on the event and things, to follow up within 24 hours, or the sooner the better, the same day if you can. You might even automate that or integrate that with an event system. It depends on the situation here. So I mentioned in the cover that we would cover off some integrations. Now, this is a huge topic, but a system I really do like is Zapier.com. And they've got a great link there talking about the best survey apps. And if you go check out Zapier, that's a really good place to learn about different integrations. So, for instance, let's say you are using Eventbrite for your events to take tickets and so on. You may be able to integrate Zapier to send out, or Zapier, a survey immediately after that date. So that's one example of a integrated survey. Another one might be follow up 1 week after some interaction in your CRM, or when a client enters into a certain stage of your CRM standing for Client Relationship Management System. So for example, we use Active Campaign, and we do automate that surveys will go out once they enter a certain stage. With our case, it's when they've completed a project, but we could be also sending out surveys throughout that process as well. So on the screen to the right there is Zapier listing a bunch of survey softwares, and that link below, which I'm happy to share at the end, gives some examples of some good survey apps. There really are a lot out there, but it's a good one to link these things together. So here they are zoomed in. I'll just talk to a couple of these that I do have first-hand experience with. SurveyMonkey I've used for a very long time, I think since 07 or something like that. So, you know, well more than 10 years. It is sort of an industry standard. A lot of people do go to it. They do have some fantastic templates. It's not too expensive. Last I knew it was about $100 US a month. Depends on what package you want though. You can do short surveys, you can do long ones. They give you lots of tips and helping hands in terms of, you know, this is going to take people on average 5 minutes to respond to. So you can say to yourself, do I think that's too long or not long enough? It certainly allows you to do lots of different types of questions. So everything from text boxes to drop downs to matrices, ratings and things like that. And it certainly produces really nice reports. So when we've collected data and surveys for clients and had to produce reports, we've certainly got very good ones from that system. I think one of their big competitors is probably Survey Gizmo. So I haven't tended to use it as much. I guess you kind of, like you often do, get loyal to a brand, and I've sort of stuck with SurveyMonkey, but it does a lot of the same things as SurveyMonkey. Poll Daddy I've certainly played with, and that's more of a poll scenario. So you ask quick questions. And if you weren't aware, you can also run a poll very easily on your Facebook page or Facebook event or Facebook group as well. Facebook has its own inbuilt poll system. So that's a good way of releasing a new product and asking, what would you like to see us do next, or testing colors, or all sorts of things there. What others have I used on here? Not so many of those others, certainly plenty of other systems. But again, I encourage you to interact and tell me if any of these are systems you're using, and these slides will be provided to you, so you can certainly go check these out and check their suitability. On that note, which I promised to deliver on, the 2 pages I typically go and look at when I'm evaluating a new system, whatever it is, including customer satisfaction systems, is the features page and the price page. Normally, I'll go and put together a list of the sort of thing I'm looking for in an ideal world, a shopping list, if you like. And I might be saying I need to be able to produce nice reports, let's say. I need to be able to mobilize surveys quickly. I need to ideally use templates. whatever it is, and then I go shopping for those things. And if I get 9 out of the 10 shopping list, it's looking like it's ticking my requirements. And then I'll also look at the price point. And some of them I'll sign up for a short time for a specific project or you know, analysis piece, and others I'll have ongoing running in the background as part of our general business type activity. And simply putting them in a comparison table is a good way for that to emerge. You could also search comparison tables for surveys. There are some online. You would need to check when it was last done, because all of these systems do update. They innovate constantly. Like if I think of what SurveyMonkey could do back in 2007 when I first started working with it versus now, it's dramatically improved. It really is. Okay, long email surveys. So I guess a little different to a post service. These, an example I've got on the screen is Red Planet. So I'm a Qantas member and they send email surveys to me randomly, and they indicate what the survey length is. They give an incentive, which is something you would probably do if you're asking someone to give up their time, and they even have a quarterly prize draw. So that's a good point to make too. Sometimes you do have to incentivize people to fill in surveys because people, their time is precious and they may or may not want to. Long email surveys sometimes will have some kind of qualifier. So let's say you have a really big database, but you really only want to understand the millennials more. One of the initial qualifiers in the questions could be, are you aged under 25? And if they say yes, then you could say, great, you can do the survey and you're eligible for the prizes. And if they say no, you can say, thanks, but we're really looking for millennials to respond to the survey. We'll be in touch on another front. So these are good surveys if you're looking for qualitative data rather than quantitative, because they're typically longer, as the name says, and you've typically qualified them, so you know that they're the demographical market who can give you the insights you're looking for. They can have a low response rate, but they can be very high quality, the responses you do get. And on that, I also said I would talk to how long is too long, how short is too short when it comes to surveys. Well, the answer to that is it depends. And it depends on your audience. It depends on the placement. So are you asking this on social media? Are you asking this via email? Are you asking this in person at an event? It depends on the audience, as in, are they younger, older, male, female, how time poor are they, etc. Depends what your goals and objectives are really to get what you're trying to get out of the survey. So I think do test how long it takes to fill in. Make sure it does work, because you're obviously going to decrease the amount of respondents you'll get if it's taking too long. And just be true to those questions, and maybe even test a couple of people before you do it. If, let's say it is millennials again, ask a couple of millennials to fill it in and go, did that take too long? Did it annoy you? Do you think other people will do it? And then refine it and make sure that it's okay. I know, let's take our annual staff employee satisfaction survey. That's a good one to mobilize. We sort of look at it each year on what do we really want to know? And we kind of go, well, they're our staff. We expect them to do it. It's part of working for us. We will make it quite long, but we'll make it pretty tick and flick, and we'll make it so that it's sort of sectioned off areas so we can really identify what areas of the business are we doing well and not doing well and need to improve in. So in that case, we don't incentivize because they do get a weekly paycheck from us. And yeah, it's customized on length based on what we're trying to get out of it. So I hope that's some food for thought on that front. There isn't a precise answer on how long should a survey be, but test the market, consider the objectives, consider who it is filling it in, and sometimes you've got to incentivize people too. Now, occasionally, I'm on the Google surveys slide now, you want to test something and get feedback. So I guess it's not customer satisfaction you're getting, but you don't even have a market to ask. So I guess rather than hounding your existing customers all the time, you could go and find a new market of the right demographic. This would be great if you were developing a product. So last year we did some work with a company that works in the construction industry, and they were looking to develop and launch a new product into Bunnings. And they wanted to ask their staff and these questions, and we said, well, are the staff really representative of your target audience? And they really weren't. So we said, you know, they said, but who else would we ask? We don't have anyone. I said, well, have you heard about Google surveys? And they haven't. So on Google surveys, you can actually specify, I want to ask this many people from this location who have these interests or use these phones or of this age or of this gender. And you do pay a fee per survey. And what that is depends on how many questions and who the demographic is and so on. But that's a good way to do product development and get feedback as well. Not necessarily on customer satisfaction, but gee, if you do this part first, I think you'll have higher customer satisfaction at the other end. So good one to know if you didn't already. On to Net Promoter Score, or NPS. I feel like this was the flavor of the month in recent years. I've certainly worked with some clients who moved this way. One of those clients ran corporate events, and they actually stripped back all their customer satisfaction systems to just NPS. And it can be good, and some companies swear by it. Personally, I found it a little bit limiting in that context, because whilst we'd get feedback from an event, yes, we liked it, or no, we didn't know what aspect they liked or they didn't. We didn't know if the food was okay, if the venue was okay, if the speaker or the MC was okay. So that particular company have actually moved to other survey methods now. So I think this is good in early days, or where you think you've got an audience that is unlikely to answer, but you really do need a gauge. So NPS, Net Promoter Score, it's a whole almost industry unto its own. And you can have a number scale and so on. Doesn't rely on emotion, but on intention. So that's quite good too. We're really just going for the numbers here, not qualitative. This is an example of a Net Promoter type score on promoter.io. So how likely are you to recommend this company to a friend or colleague? So you can say extremely likely or not likely. And in NPS, they talk about anyone being 7 or higher being a promoter, as in they're likely to promote your company. They're really pretty happy. And anyone, I think, further down the list is a detractor, as in they're probably going to go say bad stuff and not do great things for you. And in the middle, they're obviously pretty neutral, and so they're certainly not a promoter. They've got the propensity to go down to a detractor. You want to get them up to promoters. So some interesting food for thought there. Customer effort scores. These don't come up as much for me in my world, but maybe they do for you. It's a unique survey where customers are asked to rank how much effort it took to resolve their issue. So we do have a support ticketing system. I would like to implement something like this, because I don't want the client to have to go back and forth asking and providing more info. I want them to, give their information and the issue be resolved as swiftly as possible without too much effort. And obviously, if a customer has an issue resolved more quickly, they're more likely to return to your services again. This all does really depend on what you're doing. I mean, look at Apple. If you've got an Apple product, you have to go to them again. You don't really have a lot of choice. But I guess if you have, another type of technology, you could shop around and get different IT companies to fix it. And if you was too hard to work with them, was a lot of effort from your side as a customer, you probably are less likely to go there. So there are systems out there. This is the language, CES, Customer Effort Score, that you could also be measuring on the customer journey, even once they're in the funnel. So now I thought I'd just provide a few more examples of systems that are out there and some experiences with them. Usually people really enjoy that part of these presentations. And you can feel free to start text chatting in questions or things that are coming to note, even your own experiences, because they're always worth sharing as well. But Ask Nicely is a system I really do like. It's very basic. It's getting really popular, and it can be triggered immediately after someone has had an experience with you, and can be based on the Net Promoter Score there. So it's multi-languages if you're dealing in a multicultural environment. And it can be multi-branded, so perhaps you're testing multiple sub-brands of your company. You can ask follow-up questions based on NPS scores. So if someone rates it poorly, you can then issue them follow-up questions, and if they answer in a high way, you can do the same. It does have integrations, so you can integrate it with your CRM or help desk, which is great. and you can automatically survey people. You can upload lists. You can see what social networks your customers are using, and time-based charting. So it's a really nice system. I filled in quite a lot of these. I don't know if you have, and I do quite like it. SURVEYMONKEY is another one that's quite popular. It's got all sorts of customizable designs. It's very mobile responsive. The integrations are certainly something I look for, because if I'm collecting data on that, I don't necessarily want to have to go and move it over somewhere else. So you can see this particular one integrates with Infusionsoft, which is a CRM if you happen to be using that, and with Intercom, which I've mentioned already today, with HubSpot, which is also a popular CRM and marketing, outbound marketing type system. Vero, which I don't have any experience with, Google Analytics, which is great, and MailChimp as well. So you can actually email people out and then collect the data in SURVEYMONKEY, which is great. SURVEYMONKEY, I mentioned, there's a couple of examples on the screen. It is the world's largest. You can actually, they have custom audiences that you can get survey results from apart from Google. So that's also good to know. You can compare yourself and benchmark yourself. It really is a feature-rich program. And there's all sorts of integrations as well, more on the enterprise side of things. So your Salesforce, your Marketo, and your Oracles. It's got some net promoter score stuff if that's important and you'd like to move into that as well. Poll Daddy, the blue screen I've got up now, I mentioned that. So you can do unlimited surveys, unlimited responses. You can actually integrate it with WordPress if you're on that website platform. You can add content from YouTube, Google, Flickr. So that could be quite good if you wanted feedback on imagery. Like let's say you were launching a new clothing range and you wanted to get feedback on, do you like the back straps on this swimwear or this swimwear? Do you like the black or do you like the red? You could play short videos and you could ask questions and say, what does this video mean to you? What do you understand from it? Do you understand what this product is? And then maybe that's a video you later roll out for marketing, so you can get that valuable feedback. So there are ways you can also, you know, get surveys as well, actually using content, videos, images, and so on. Get Satisfaction is another system that's out in the marketplace and pretty well loved and used. It's got a Facebook integration. So if you wanted to be collecting responses via your Facebook channel, that's a way you could do it. It's got self-service customer support abilities. So it's a bit of a pseudo support ticket system, and you can configure it a fair bit, which could be quite helpful to you. And it also creates like a repository of frequently asked questions, like a forum. So rather than answering the same stuff and servicing clients and trying to keep them happy, over time you can build up this great IP. Survey Gizmo, I'm on that slide now. It's I touched on that before, a little bit more information on that. They can do pop-up surveys, reminder emails. It can do a Google spreadsheet integration if you wanted to export the data, Google Analytics integration, bunches of other stuff. Some of it may be relevant to you, some of it may not, but it's certainly a robust survey system as well. So I'd love to know, even if you don't have a question, are there any systems out of those I've looked at today and explained to you that you might like to look at based on what you've learned? Have I piqued your interest that perhaps you could be asking questions earlier on in the customer life cycle, early stages or mid stages, not just always at the end? And what do you think about net promoter scores and short answers? What do you think about incentivizing people? Are you getting enough respondents? Could you incentivize them in some way to respond, even if it's a weekly prize draw or monthly? So that's all my slides today. Just on the last one, the questions. I'm going to flick over now and see if any questions have been coming through. Doesn't look like they have. Not such an interactive audience today. I would love to know what customer satisfaction systems are you using at the moment? And probably worth dropping what industry you're in as well. So I can see there's a Sylvia and a Renee online and bunches of other people. No one fancies chatting, but I do want to make sure you've got the opportunity. Well, I do hope you've learned something out of today. We do allocate time to questions. Sometimes on these sessions there's a lot, and we use the full 15 minutes. Do I have any suggestions for audio survey platforms? A couple of those that I just mentioned are in there. So Survey Gizmo does those. I believe GoDaddy does as well from memory. It depends, like even if they don't, you can probably do a workaround. Like you could upload the audio to SoundCloud and perhaps drop a link in and embed it, because SoundCloud's got some good embed links. So that would be worth exploring as well. Mark says, we use NPS and CSAT and find reviewing the customer comments for opportunities as valuable as the scores. I'd have to agree with you there, Mark. Customer comments are absolute gold. And you know what I like doing with customer comments? I love then turning them into marketing material, because if they've given a positive bit of feedback saying that they loved the whatever they bought from you because of XYZ, that XYZ could well be the hook for the next customer. So it's a great way to regurgitate that comment and see what other parts that are really, really attractive to people about your product or service. Who is going to try out something new based on what they've learnt today? What new systems might you look at? Are you integrated enough? I mean, integration is key. Why export stuff, import stuff, and not have the benefit of, you know, customer data traveling through your organization as seamlessly as possible? That's really pretty valuable. Any other comments there? Curious to know, Mark, you're using NPS and CSAT. What systems are you actually using? Be curious to know if they're the ones I've mentioned today. Renee just asked, do I have any suggestions for audio survey platforms? And I just mentioned those a moment ago, but happy to go over them again. I mentioned that Survey Gizmo does those. I believe SurveyMonkey does those. PollDaddy does those, and there would be others. Jess said we also use SurveyMonkey and find the system valuable. Yeah, it really is an industry leader, and it is the most well used, and you can see why, because it just works really, really well. I'm always amazed actually how many people confuse SurveyMonkey with MailChimp, just because of the chimp and the monkey. I think they're very different companies, but they're actually based out of the quite same area in San Francisco. So maybe that's why they get confused as well. Mark said, post-interaction survey via email. They would love a post-call survey after a phone contact, ideally. Yeah, you can gauge a lot off the phone, can't you? Because you can clarify. And, of course, if someone's just entering it independently on email or an online survey, they can sometimes just chuck in an answer because they just want to get through it. Whereas with a phone, if you're hearing that faltering voice or that uncertainty, you can go again and ask them in a different way to get absolute clarity, can't you? Any other systems anybody's using? Any other feedback anyone would like to share? Successes they've had with customer satisfaction systems. It's been really valuable because you've had that and you've actually implemented perhaps a change for the business to improve things. You're a quiet bunch today. There's plenty of you on. Well, whether you're looking at this live now or watching the recording, which will be made available, I do hope you've got lots out of today's session and that you will go away and play with some of those tools. And don't forget, you don't have to just use the customer satisfaction post journey. You can use them in those early stages of gauging that customer and understanding what sort of experience they are likely to want to have with your business and connecting them to the right information and providing a really strong customer experience right from the get-go through means like live chat and Facebook messaging and so on. And we'll actually be running future sessions on those topics where you'll be able to learn more about customer experience systems such as CRMs and digital phone systems that actually record those calls so you can listen back and work out how to improve the customer experience. Also, Facebook messaging. We're doing a session on that later in the year, and that's just absolutely exploding with how many people are using it and how many customers are turning to messaging to get a response, because they often think they'll get a quicker response if they go via Facebook itself, the page, as opposed to an email and things. And if you think about it, email is an old technology these days, and it is quite slow. So I've spent some time, as I said, with Facebook in Sydney, and I've got all the latest stats and all the latest trends, and I've been experimenting with quite a few clients on the Facebook Messenger front, and there's some really exciting things that it can do that I can't wait to show you. So hope you can join us for future sessions with SOCAP. All the details are listed on the SOCAP website itself, and they're coming up about, I think the next one's next month in May. So go on and have a look, and we hope to host you again. You can't make that live session, of course. You could always still register and get the recording thereafter. Thank you for letting me know of the issues with the screen. I'm not quite sure how that eventuated, as I did test it right before we went live with a staff member. But I'm glad we had the backup plan of sharing those slides and that you were able to access them okay. I hope you got a lot out of today's session. I hope you'll join us again soon, and have a good rest of a Tuesday. No longer April Fools. I'm certainly pleased about that. My team got me on a few counts. All the best, everyone.